Good afternoon, everyone. Oki, Daranastada, Mawastich, and Tansei. While I am relieved to see that the provincial government is taking some action against tariffs in the form of halting the sale of U.S. liquor and creating trade deals interprovincially, there's a couple of really big questions that remain unanswered. First, what is the actual plan for the $4 billion contingency fund that was written into the provincial budget? We heard the Minister of Finance tell our city last Friday that there is no plan. It's a wait-and-see approach until there are possibly welfare lines due to the tariffs. That's too late, and we don't have the luxury of time. Waiting until people have lost their livelihoods is not a plan. Offering income tax cuts to people who don't have a job is not a plan. We need solutions that are designed to provide relief to businesses who will be the hardest hit. Oil, agriculture, manufacturing, they all sounded the alarm well before the tariffs actually went into place. Beef producers have told us yesterday, on day one of the tariffs, that their industry could be seriously damaged if this carries on. We need a plan from the province that addresses the very real needs of people and businesses in Calgary. Answer the very obvious question. What is the plan with the $4 billion contingency you set aside for tariffs? And second, what exactly is the provincial government's obsession with border security at a time when Calgarians and Albertans are being hammered by tariffs? Just because President Trump manufactured a boogeyman and named it fentanyl doesn't mean we have to play into his hand. He made fentanyl at the border the red herring, and this provincial government can't seem to shake that. Trying to appease a bully like Trump is not the Canadian way. We stand up to bullies, and we do that elbows up, standing strong together. Now's the time for all of us, all orders of government, to stand united and protect the people that we were elected to serve. The only way to win this is to withstand the short-term pain by taking a stand on reinforcing our local economies and remaining true to our national identity as fighters and by believing in ourselves. With that, I'm happy to take any questions.
Mayor, I take it with the Premier's comments today relating to procurement, that then I guess is sort of the green light for the city to change its rules. Can you tell us what might be coming?
Well, the city, more than a week ago, presented a report that identified our procurement is largely Canadian, it's largely local. Only 5% of our procurement is going outside of this nation. So we have been taking proactive steps over the years to ensure that any procurement we do is as local as possible. So Calgary has been a leader in this sense.
I'm still not clear though, in terms of the province's interest in all things municipal. Can the city take the American content down to zero now?
I can tell you that the folks on our finance team are looking very carefully at whether we can even bring that 5% down further. So again, this is something that we saw coming. It's something that we proactively addressed, and I'm quite surprised that the provincial government waited till today to announce their plan. That's kind of not a plan when you think about the fact that $4 billion worth of contingency funds still have no programs attached to it.
So on the contingency fund, what would you pitch to the Premier right now for help using that $4 billion?
You know, I would make sure that she strikes some sort of a tariff advisory group. I did that over a week ago. We sat down with people who are leaders in industry that said, these are the ways that we are going to get hammered if these tariffs get in. These are the very real impacts to our employees. These are the impacts to our procurement policies. We are going to have round 2 of that tariff advisory working group coming up very shortly. I'm working closely with Calgary Chamber of Commerce as well as Calgary Economic Development to identify who we need in the room so we can take action. City of Calgary has also committed to being a repository of sorts and to having a web page that helps people understand how they could source differently, what alternatives are in place. Calgary Economic Development has agreed to do a tariff tracker to be able to update us all on what's happening to different sectors because of the tariffs. Those are real steps, those are actions, and that's what I need to see from the province. Who are they going to talk to in business to make sure the $4 billion is spent wisely?
Mayor, yesterday you had mentioned that you sent a letter to the Premier, just kind of tell us where you're at, here's where we're at. Were you surprised, though, then today that there wasn't really any mention of how the province was going to help cities navigate this, or municipalities, and it was a little bit more overarching than perhaps maybe people wanted it to be?
I mean, we've been doing competitive analysis on what's happening throughout this country when it comes to tariff responses. And I can tell you that other provinces had a plan ready to go as soon as it was announced that tariffs would come into play. And so I'm not sure why our province didn't have that. I'm not sure why it took so long to make an announcement about what we're gonna do. You know, the fact that they're just trying to get their own plan together means that they haven't really put a lot of thought into the impacts that are gonna happen to cities like Calgary.
What do you make of the non-tariff retaliations with the booze and labels? Is that sharp enough of an elbow for you?
I would say anytime you are restricting the ability to sell any goods that are made in the US, that's absolutely creating a penalty for the US, not only the US government, but for US suppliers, and it's gonna hit businesses very hard. We've already seen posts from Kentucky talking about their bourbon. We've already seen other liquor providers saying halting all sales of US products is worse than a tariff. So I'm happy that some steps are being taken, but we need to go much further. And protecting local businesses and Calgarians is a very big step, and I need to know what they're gonna do with their $4 billion they've put aside in this budget.
Well, going back to Matt's question, though, what do you want to see? What do you think should be done for cities?
I can tell you that in this city, I have heard from business leaders that they need supports and they need help. And they have also said, we can tell you what the impact of retaliatory tariffs would be. So I would want the provincial government to be having those conversations as well to understand what those businesses need. I mean, if I can give you an example of film and television, booming business in our province. Let's make sure that stays strong by creating more incentive programs. Let's make sure we're understanding what the impacts are to beef producers who came out yesterday and said their industry is getting hit very hard. If you're not talking to the people who are telling you they're gonna suffer, you're not gonna be able to come up with solutions, and that's what I need the provincial government to do.
I know you're going to Edmonton, Mayor, so have you had a confirmation yet of a meeting time with the Premier?
As of yet, I have no meeting time with the Premier to talk about what their plan is with their $4 billion contingency fund. I do hope that there are provincial ministers as well as the Premier present at Alberta municipalities when we go to that conference over the next couple of days. There's many, many questions that need to be answered. And if they want to hear how municipalities are feeling, that would be a great opportunity.
Have you, to that end, have you had any conversations with Mayor Sohi up in Edmonton about the impacts or even intermunicipal trade or those sorts of things, how you might be able to break down some of those types of barriers?
So Mayor Sohi and I were both in Ottawa a couple of weeks ago. It was the Big City Mayor's Caucus, and we met with our colleagues from across the country to talk about impacts to municipalities, especially big cities, with potential tariffs. The cities of Windsor and Surrey, for example, that are very close to the border, had their own concerns that they conveyed to us, and they were pushing very hard to remove interprovincial barriers. And so all of us as mayors had pushed the federal government to do more, to knock down those interprovincial barriers, and we continue to advocate up to the provincial government to see what we can do to work better with other provinces to improve our relationships across this nation to keep Canada strong.
One of the Premier's arguments today was that, one, the province is providing a tax cut, two, Ottawa is going to handle all the revenue from the tariffs. One, do you know whether there's going to be revenue from tariffs coming to Calgary, any sort of plan for those funds being used that come back to the city? And then two, what do you make of the argument that the federal government's sort of in charge of the response right now for using that revenue from tariffs?
What I need to understand from the provincial government is how an income tax cut is going to help somebody that doesn't have a job. That's basically the question right there. People are going to lose their jobs if the tariffs continue, and no income tax cut you give them is going to save them, their families, and their homes. So what is this $4 billion contingency about? And if it is in fact to wait for the welfare lines to start, as was indicated by Minister Horner, that is not a plan. I need to understand how those $4 billion are going to be used to support businesses, especially small businesses, which are 95% of the business community in this city.
Quickly, Mayor, Calgary has a sister city in Arizona. Have you reached out to your counterpart in Phoenix?
I have not reached out to anyone in the United States in terms of municipal leaders, other than the ones that we are in touch with through the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. There is an organized approach to meeting with mayors down in the U.S. There was a statement put out by the United States Council of Mayors. I may not have that name completely right, but there is an organization of mayors in the United States that put out a statement earlier saying that they do not agree with tariffs, and it is going to be punishing on both the American and Canadian people as well as the Mexican people.
That's all we have time for. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you.